throughout the night. Now, Fox 8 News reporter Lori Taylor attended the news conference that Governor Tom Ridge just finished. Lori, what did the governor say?
Well, prior to his arrival here in Stony Creek Township, he flew over the crash site and he was able to see what our cameras were prevented from viewing. He said essentially all there is a giant crater. Most of the debris from the plane is in that crater, but there is nothing that would identify it as a plane. There is an effort on to recover the black box. No word yet on whether or not they have found it. But again, the debris from the United Airlines flight is in no way recognizable. They are working now to recover bodies. What we did notice from our vantage point from the press conference was that there was a huge pyramid, a brown pyramid. It appeared to be dirt. It was not there when we took that bus ride down that road about 3 miles to view the crash site. We also saw what appeared to be body sniffing dogs going through the dirt, and they were removing things from it. So already the effort underway to collect pieces of evidence. The FAA and the FBI are going to be logging everything that they find, and their hope is to reconstruct this plane so they will have a better idea of exactly what went down. The FBI, as we speak, is continuing on with the press conference. We're hoping to glean more information from that. Hopefully we'll have something within the hour.
All right, thank you, Lori and Kevin.
And the president is landing in Washington at this hour. Let's go to Washington.
The White House, so we will watch and see if the president emerges. It will be the first time since this morning that we have seen a live picture of the president of the United States, who has spent much of the rest of the day in the air aboard Air Force One, going from one U.S. military base to another, ultimately declining to go along with the recommendations of some of his security people that he go to the North American Air Defense Command inside of a mountain in Colorado and hover there until people gave the all clear. The president's advisors were not pleased with that request, felt it made the president look in an inappropriate light, and the result of that was the decision to come back here this evening, and that is what we are watching unfold as we speak here. It's not exactly clear that the president is going to speak at 9 p.m., but that was the estimate that was given us, so we will wait and see if the White House in fact confirms that. Joining us here in our studios in Washington is Republican Senator Jon Kyl of Arizona. Senator Kyl, you've now had a chance to be briefed yourself. You've heard the remarks from the Pentagon by a couple of your colleagues and, of course, by the Secretary of Defense. What are your impressions at this hour of this whole entire situation and the United States' response to it to date?
Britt, I think those expressions were entirely appropriate. The concern for those who were injured and the concern for the families of those who were killed. The commitment that we would do everything we could to bring the perpetrators of this tragedy to justice and do what we could to ensure that it didn't happen in the future. As a member of the Intelligence Committee, though, I'm going
to interrupt you to note that there's the president.
I'm delighted that the president has returned to Washington. I think the American people want to hear from him. I hope we'll hear from him tonight. And I also hope that as a result of this tragedy, that the commitment that we all express verbally, we can translate into action, because there are many things we could do to improve our intelligence and our national security, and I'm afraid that, unfortunately, it may take an incident like this to actually force us to do some of those things that we could have done earlier.
There you see, as the president goes by, see all those chairs and tables stacked up. There was to be on the south grounds of the White House tonight, Senator, as you know, a congressional picnic. And, of course, plans for that had to be scrubbed because of the obvious circumstances. There the president is walking up that fieldstone path there up to the west wing of the White House, from which he is expected to address the country in just a short period of time. There you see him joined by Karen Hughes, who did the talking for him a couple hours ago at FBI headquarters. Let me go back now to you, Senator Kyl.
All right, that being the Fox News Network.
Yeah, President Bush returning to the White House. He will address the country tonight. The precise time is not yet known. As time passes by,
its details immense. A massive twin structure, 110 stories tall, built of 600,000 square feet of glass and 200,000 tons of steel. 1,350 feet tall, 43,000 windows, 99 elevators, and a home for 1,200 businesses. Businesses where 50,000 people work. Businesses that include commodity exchanges, investment firms, law firms, banks, restaurants, a hotel, government offices, a top and observation deck, a renowned tourist attraction. The Trade Center could draw 90,000 additional visitors on a busy day. Today, the Twin Towers, many of those inside, gone. That's just one of the many reasons, of course, that today will be remembered as one of the worst days in the nearly 400-year history of the great city of New York. And NBC's Pat Dawson has been on the streets of New York, very near the World Trade Center throughout most of the day. He's been witness to the heroic rescue efforts that were effected there today. And of course, tonight, Pat, still an unknown number of dead trapped there in the rubble.
It's very true, Tom. Police, fire, and emergency workers first on the scene this morning knew they had a catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. What they didn't realize is that after they arrived, it would get worse, and that many of them would be victims as well. Within minutes of the attack, New York rescue crews responded. Dozens of emergency workers running headlong into the chaos, a swirling mass of fire and smoke more than 60 stories up. Chief Albert Turry of the New York Fire Department was one of the first on the scene.
The initial reaction was that it was an absolute terrorist attack.
His job, direct a rescue effort inside the Trade Center. His team of 200 firefighters fanned out into the burning towers to search for survivors.
When that first tower fell, I was trying to evacuate everybody 3 blocks north, away from every high-rise building in the area.
But when the towers started crumbling, crashing all around them, the original rescue effort became an exercise in survival, the rescuers themselves running for their lives.
But I'm telling you right now, there wasn't time to evacuate our people.
Most of those that did make it out of the Trade Center covered in debris, ghostly figures coughing and vomiting from the smoke and dust.
It was the most horrific scene I've ever seen in my whole life. We saw the World Trade Center in flames, a big gaping hole all the way on the top of it. We could see people jumping from the top of the building.
At midday, the financial district of Lower Manhattan looks like a war zone. With no idea if another attack is imminent, hundreds of companies throughout New York send their workers home. Bridges and tunnels across the Hudson River are closed. Mass transit shut down.
There are over 1,000 rescue workers, probably about 2,000 that are deployed, trying to get into the buildings, trying to find people, trying to search for people. The governor and I spoke a couple of hours ago. The governor has deployed the National Guard to relieve them because our people are going to need reinforcements pretty soon. But right now they don't want to leave because they're searching for innocent citizens, and they're searching for some of their brothers and sisters.
When rescuers finally got inside the trade towers, the damage left many of them shocked at the near total devastation. There's no way to estimate casualties. Thousands are believed dead. For those used to saving lives, the frustration is overwhelming.
When you start talking to a New York police officer and they start crying for what they've seen in the last couple hours, you know the seriousness and the gravity of the situation.
Throughout the day, rescuers have faced a terrible choice with hundreds, perhaps thousands of people trapped in the rubble in there. When is it safe to go back in? And Tom, the most vivid example of that, referred to by David Bloom a little while ago, that, of course, the loss of Building 7 of the World Trade Center just over my shoulder, which tumbled to the ground 8 hours after this attack began. Tom?
NBC's Pat Dawson in Lower Manhattan tonight, and of course, for many of the people who lived through all of that, it will be one of the unforgettable moments of their lives. NBC's Ann Thompson was in the vicinity of the World Trade Center when the buildings began to come down. Ann?
Tom, this is the view tonight down West Broadway. Smoke's filling the air where the 2 towers in building number 7 stood. In the last hour, we have seen busloads of police, of doctors, and ambulance after ambulance go into that area to try to repair a city that's been mortally wounded by this attack. A direct hit that shattered New York City's confidence.
Well, as soon as the first building collapsed, everybody made a mad dash to just take cover.
And everybody just started running. I just happened to duck right into the post office. As soon as we got out of the train station, people were screaming and crying and yelling, and it was just total chaos, and the bottom of our building was blown out.
For me, Ground Zero, Fulton and Broadway, about 2 blocks from the World Trade Center, just as the South Tower crumbled.
Hollywood could never imagine something like this. A tidal wave of smoke and debris came roaring down Broadway. I was standing at the corner of Fulton and Broadway. I ran into a building, ran between a column and a building at 195 Broadway, and pushed my face and my body into that building. For what seemed like 5 minutes, I was pelted with all kinds of debris. I crouched down, was coughing, trying to breathe. You couldn't get any air. The air was so full of smoke and dust. When it finally settled, I stood up. My glasses were covered with dust. Hours later, I'm still covered with dust. The building that I was in front of, 195 Broadway, the doors were gated shut. They opened the doors, let us in, and inside we were finally able to breathe. It wasn't easy. My eyes were filled with dust. My mouth was filled with dust. I was choking. The people I was with were choking. It was just absolutely horrific. All I could think of was, this is war.
I just heard the rumble, and then I ran like hell, and there was a large wind coming.
Down here, panic. Survivors flee by whatever means they can, fearing more destruction at any moment.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
Everyone, please clear the corner.
Palpable fear as people run through the streets, choking on dust and debris.
You gotta chase it. Come on, let's go, let's go.
We saw the building come down. We all ran, and the walkway held up to save like 40 or 50 of us that were right there. We were buried there, and then cops shot out windows in the next building. It was the only thing that was in front of us was like these 1-inch windows.
The streets of the financial district covered with debris, in some cases ankle deep. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosions. It was like something no one had ever seen.
Panic, like smoke, heads uptown. Officials ordering precautionary evacuations of some of New York City's landmarks.
This is an orderly evacuation of 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
On the street, anxious commuters trying to call home, cell phone service dead. At Grand Central Station, travelers desperate to get out of the city.
It's gonna take a long time, but you're gonna see Mama and Papa today, okay?
Outside the station, a surreal scene. People buying postcards of the Twin Towers that no longer exist. As the day wears on, witnesses who survived the attack now face a new horror, searching for missing friends and co-workers.
We can't account for all of our employees. We're just in a state of shock.
The biggest, busiest city in the world, the attack revives fears of the 1993 bombing. Suddenly, nowhere in the financial district seems safe.
Did you ever think this could happen again?
No, I really didn't. I lived through the first one.
After a tragedy so great, tonight a city comes together, searching for safety and comfort.
Tom, now this area is more than just a business district. It is also where people live. And within the last hour, we have seen families bringing suitcases, crates carrying their family pets to leave and to go elsewhere. They have no water, they have no gas, and there is also the fear that more buildings will collapse. The area is covered by police from all over New York City, and they tell us that they will be here through the night. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Ann Thompson. But let me ask you, after you finally emerged from that building, what about other people who could not get into a building? What kind of casualties did you see?
Tom, I will tell you that when I walked out of the building,